Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Hum, a Kansas Hoops podcast via the Field of 68. I'm your host, Sam Lance, and I'm joined as always by Jackson Bezdek. And Jackson, we've only talked about one loss on this podcast so far, and that was Kansas falling to Marquette and Maui. But now the Jayhawks have fallen again, this time in Orlando to a packed house at UCF. So, we've got a lot to go over from this one. So buckle in, everybody. Episode 16 of The Hum, a Kansas Hoops podcast, coming right up. Well, Jackson, we just said it. We just mentioned it. Kansas took its second loss of the season on Wednesday night at the hands of UCF, 65-60. The Knights just had an absolutely incredible home atmosphere there. Bill Self mentioned in the pregame that it was only the second sellout in school history, but man, the UCF crowd came to play in this one, and so did UCF.
Yeah, I'm pretty upset today, Sam Lance. That was we talked about it last episode. It was a trappy looking game. It really was their first ever conference game. It's exactly what happened in the 2013 TCU loss. It's their very first Big 12 game. Everyone's all amped up about it, and Kansas just did not respond. They didn't play well at all. I mean, we can talk about the turnovers in a sec, but Kansas straight up looked bad last night, and UCF put it on them.
Yeah, it seems like it's kind of been a theme this season of Kansas playing down to its competition a little bit, and that was no exception in this game. But we talked about the environment, and I really think that environment helped UCF get off to the strong start that they got off to. It was a 7-0 run to begin the game for the Knights, and Bill Self, he said pregame that defensive rebounding would be super key in this game, and right from the start, Kansas gives up 2 offensive rebounds, and then Sellers got going. He hits that 3. Really, it was the worst start that you could ask for if you're Kansas. And before calling that timeout, of course, Self had the old hands on the head that he had many a times in this game. But yeah, just terrible start for Kansas to go down 7-0 the way that they did, getting the crowd into it, getting Sellers rolling too. Just not an ideal start to this one.
Crowd was locked in from the beginning. It was a great crowd. Like, you can make jokes that that's the only game they'll go to all year, or the second sellout ever. Of course, when Kansas comes into town. But hey, the fact of the matter is they were loud and they bothered Kansas. They bothered them in the first 3 minutes, absolutely. And then even when Kansas eventually, takes a big lead in this game, the crowd would never waned. I mean, I think starting off strong, like, certainly did help UCF, but that got the crowd engaged right away, and they stayed engaged for 2 hours, no matter how bad the lead got one way or another. And yeah, I don't know if that happens if they don't start off 7-0, and I don't know if they start off 7-0 if Kansas gets a freaking rebound on the first possession. I mean, that's how crazy like college basketball can change in one possession. That if Kansas gets that defensive rebound to start the game, maybe it's 7-0 Kansas and then 19-2 Kansas. Maybe we're having a very different conversation, but man, that crowd was jumping. It really was.
Yeah. It was 7-0 run, like we mentioned to begin the game for UCF, but Kansas had a pretty good response to that right away. Johnny Furphy comes in for Elmarco Jackson right off the bat before the under-16 timeout, which I think that's the earliest Furphy has come in this season. So that's pretty interesting to see Bill Self push that button right away. And right whenever Furphy comes in, things started going well. KJ had a pretty crazy sequence. I don't know if you remember this, but he dunks it at one end, gets the block on the other, and it goes out of bounds. And then he skies for a crazy defensive rebound, and all a matter of 3 plays. And I remember watching and be like, yeah, like this kid's going to get drafted one day just by watching that sequence. But then Furphy gets going. Furphy ties the game with a 3 at 7-7. Then Furphy gets that steal, and he throws it down on top of somebody in transition. Caught an absolute body there, and next thing you know, it's 12-7 KU after a slow start, and in huge part because of Johnny Furphy.
This is why this game ended up being so surprising. Like, once this happens, usually Kansas is like good to go, right? They only need one kind of punch in the mouth. Then they make a big run. Like, this was very scripted. Like, this this happens in Kansas games all the time. These weird Big 12 road games, you don't come out necessarily hot. The crowd is on fire. Timeout, come back out, and then calm everything down. Everything's good to go. This was exactly what Kansas needed. Furphy was a great spark off the bench for El Marco. I don't even necessarily think that El Marco did anything wrong in 2.5 minutes, but Bill looked at the bench. Clearly, Kansas needs scoring right now, and Furphy is a guy that he trusts more than a lot of guys on this roster to give him instant points. That was a great move by Self, going to Furphy as early as he did, because Johnny was such a huge reason we climbed out of that hole. And obviously, KJ is like, he was bouncing up and down all in that first half. He had a great first half. He had a couple plays, that sequence you're talking about. I'm sitting there like, oh, maybe he's the best player in America. Maybe we've been talking about the wrong two Kansas players this whole
Most
time.
athletic for sure.
KJ's the guy. Yeah, dude. It's some of the stuff he can do. Like he had the one pass where El Marco kind of shoveled it to him when he was at the high post, wasn't expecting it, caught it, and then made one dribble, 2 feet dunk. And all in about 2 seconds, where he didn't even think he was going to get the ball. He's just a crazy gifted athlete.
With Furphy rolling and with KJ rolling early on, Kansas overall was rolling. KJ made another big dunk to make it a 23-5 overall run for Kansas to put the game at 23-12. So many highlight plays to start this game, by the way. Like Kansas could make its own season highlight mixtape with just that first few moments of the game. But yeah, then things start going like a little crazy for Kansas. We have Nick Timberlake, the whole holding on to the ball thing, the old bad boy Timberlake. And, you had the El Marco and Timberlake duo kind of going crazy, really just getting after it in transition. And that transition bucket spree ends up giving Kansas a 35-19 lead with 3:45 left. Let's talk about kind of Timberlake and El Marco and that duo there for a second. What did you like about that, Jackson?
I at least like that they're playing hard. It's funny that Timberlake is the guy that get caught up in that when he's been like one of the more disappointing players all season. Like, what is he talking about? But I like seeing that. Like, I really do. Especially in that environment. I mean, I can't even imagine what some of the fans were saying to the guys, but and that sparks everybody, and Kansas just run and gun after that. I mean, the Furphy poster, which was insane, that kind of set the precedent for the rest of the half, where Kansas could do anything in transition. And El Marco's really good in transition. And Timberlake, for all we talk about, is still a really good athlete. Like he has some plays where you can tell that like there's a lot of athleticism there. Even going back to his Townsend highlights, like he was dunking on guys last year. He can clearly get out and move in transition. And I thought it was nice to see. It was needed, honestly, to keep the gas pedal on, which again, just like I can't believe that Kansas lets this game get away from them. When Timberlake is, making layups in transition, Furphy's catching bodies, and Marco's playing with confidence. You grow the lead to almost 20. Like, I just can't believe the second half went the way it did.
Just with the whole Timberlake and El Marco being on the floor together. There's one point where the broadcast went on Bill Self and was showing him, and I'm not the best lip reader, but he's definitely said two guards and whatever he was saying, and I think he was talking about how much he liked the kind of two guard look with Timberlake and Marco Jackson. I mean, we've been talking about all year like who's going to fill that two spot, and it has to be either Timberlake or Marco. Well, what about the two of them playing together? We hadn't really seen that much, and I thought the two played very, very well together. So hopefully we see that a little more this season. But yeah, it was good to see kind of just the bench overall get going a little bit. Kansas had 14 bench points
Yeah, I
up
was going to
until
say
the wheels kind of started falling off, and I'm not exactly sure where that ranks for Kansas this season, but I would almost bet that Kansas's 17 bench points in total last night was the most they've had all year.
Gotta be the most. Even Parker hit a 3 in that half, man. I mean, that was easily like the most productive that the bench has been all season. I think that's why like I'm partially like so shocked right now, is because we keep saying if you can get anything from the bench, that's gonna be great. The bench was stepping up in the first half, like straight up. Timberlake came in with a dog. Timberlake came in was an absolute dog. Somebody's home from break. That was ridiculous. Timberlake came in absolute dog. Furphy's hitting shots. Like everything it was looking great. Parker got his patented one block a game. I swear he's got to get one when he comes in the first half. Yeah, I completely agree. I gave the bench a 2 thumbs up for their performance.
Well, once it got to that 3:45 mark, Kansas, they're shooting 76%, huge lead, everything's going well, but really from that point on, the wheels just started completely falling off for Kansas. Dickinson ended up picking up his second foul late in that first half, and Parker Brown kind of had to step up and come in, but didn't do a great job. UCF, very quick 8-0 run to make it a 35-27 game, and Kansas, without Hunter Dickinson, the last 3:30 to close the half, did not score a single basket until Kevin McCullough hit that just ridiculous mid-range at the buzzer to give it a 37-29 lead for Kansas. But man, you're sitting there. It should have been probably a 16 to 20 point game at half. And next thing you know, UCF's going in the locker room with a little bit of momentum. Definitely not ideal to do that, but going into halftime, you had KJ with 8 points, Hunter Dickinson with 6, Furphy with 7, Timberlake with 4, McCullough with 7, all of this balanced scoring. You think things are going to go great, 68% from the field, but no. UCF comes out in the second half in this 3-2 extended zone. Hunter picks up his third foul with around 17 minutes to play, and UCF just keeps hanging around. Kansas couldn't put the ball in the basket to save their lives to start the second half. And I don't know if you remember this, but Kansas also kept fouling. There's about 5 fouls through the first 6 minutes. And,
yeah.
I mean, a lot of them were pretty ticky-tack, but, it is what it is. All of this, next thing you know, it's a tie game. It's 43-43. Kansas's 16-point lead completely evaporated. And then Sellers hits a little floater to take a 1-point lead, and then Johnson hits a 3 to send the crowd into an absolute frenzy. KU losing now 48-44. Not many offensive answers without Hunter Dickinson in the game.
Yeah, I mean, look, Hunter getting into foul trouble is a huge reason why Kansas loses control in the second half. I mean, the run to end the first half, it was, I don't know, just the end of the first half, the start of the second half, there wasn't a ton of intensity from the Kansas side. I mean, Dewan was really bad again, honestly. I did not like how he played. And like to start the game in that first half, he was doing fine. He had 6 assists in the first half. Like, I mean, that's great from DeJuan Harris. That's what you want. But the turnovers were adding up. McCullough was really sloppy with the ball, I thought. Like really sloppy. He had, I think, 5 turnovers himself, and he could have had 9 if the ball was deflected a different way out of bounds. I mean, he was not. And then KJ, it rubs off on KJ too. It goes from the top down. When DeJuan is being sloppy, the whole team kind of seems to like lose their edge a little bit. And that zone really threw Kansas off, which is not a normal. Usually Bill Self destroys zones. Like usually when teams go zone against Kansas, I laugh and I'm like, all right, it's going to take maybe 2 possessions before we get a wide open corner 3 out of this. And it never happened. UCF we talked about it. They're a good defensive team. They were top 25 in Ken Palm coming into this game defensively. So that it wasn't going to be Kansas scoring 90 points. That was never going to be how the game went. But their length on the perimeter, their big guys down low, Diallo was phenomenal. I mean, that's probably the best game he'll play all year. And he was great on both ends of the floor. Everything came off like the wheels just started coming off once they came out in that zone. And I don't know, there's nothing really to talk about other than there's no why Kansas was sloppy with the ball. Kansas was just sloppy with the ball.
Yeah. You mentioned it, the turnovers there. Kansas, this 2 straight games now that Kansas had 18 turnovers. And like we mentioned last episode, the 18 turnovers for the Marquette game is the season high. So every time Kansas has played poorly, it's because they have turned the ball over. And that wasn't really the entire reason in this one, but man, it was a very, very, very big reason. But yeah, like we said, UCF on a 19-7 run from the break, and overall from whenever Kansas had that 36-19 lead, UCF was on a 29-9 run whenever they ended up going up 48-44. But really all the way down the stretch, this game just kind of stayed close from then on. And McCullough, he actually ended up hitting a big time three. It seems like he's done that many a times this year. Makes it a 57-56 game. And then DeJuan hits one of the 1-1 to tie it with 3:20 left. And now Hunter Dickinson comes back into the game after this. I believe he actually had 4 fouls whenever he comes back in, but now it's like, okay, Kansas has weathered another pretty big storm. It's a tie game. There's 3 minutes left. We've seen this a million times for Kansas basketball. Bill Self wins these types of games, right? Right, Jackson?
He does. He does. I know, dude. I do.
But not this one. Not this one. And really, listen to this. This was a big thing for me in this game is Hunter Dickinson to close the game was bad. Jackson was very bad. This is how the game concluded right here. Diallo posts up Hunter and scores. Okay, 2-point lead for UCF. Dickinson, he tries to respond on the other end, gets something over his left shoulder, his right shoulder with his left hand, misses. Can't get that. He then fouls UCF on the other end to give them free throws. They make both. It's now 61-57. And after this bad stretch by Hunt, of course, he wants to try to make up for it. And he shoots a 3 and he misses it. He wanted that shot. I thought that was really what was telling to me is he wanted that shot. Hunter did not roll to the basket one time during that possession. He stayed on the 3-point line the whole time.
Yep.
So he misses that. Then Sellers makes a layup to make it 63-57. Kansas gets the ball back. Hunter turns it over on the dribble handoff, throws it way up in the air. Luckily, Kansas ends up getting the ball back from that, and Hunter makes a 3, but once that happened, it was way too late for Kansas. There's literally no time left. UCF hits 2 free throws to go up 65-60, and I don't know if you remember the whole thing at the end, but Kansas couldn't even get really a shot off to trim the lead and have to foul UCF again to get a chance to tie the game or anything. But yeah, ball game. Hunter Dickinson can't get anything to go in the last 3 minutes, nor can Kansas, and it's a 65-60 loss at the hands of UCF.
Hunter had no rhythm throughout that whole second half, and it was because he was in foul trouble. But what I thought was interesting is when he got his 3rd foul, Self went to Furphy, not Parker. So it was a KJ at the 5 lineup, which we saw a lot of in that half. And I think it was so normal to him seeing that. Hunter didn't come back in for I think it was 9 minutes with 3 fouls. And usually Self's pretty good about not freaking out about fouls, and he'll play like McCullough with 3, he'll play McCullough with 2 in the first half. But that was kind of uncharacteristic for Self. As the wheels are falling off, we didn't go back to Dickinson, but I don't think Dickinson was a right matchup. I think Diallo kind of owned him, Sam. Would you agree? I mean,
I wouldn't say he owned him because Hunter just was in foul trouble the whole game. Hunter didn't have a bad game, 5 of 9, 1 of 3 from 3, 4 rebounds.
He needs to shoot more than 9 shots. That's part of the issue.
Not in the game though. You can't shoot it. So
there wasn't an emphasis on getting Hunter the ball in the middle. There wasn't an emphasis on doing anything in the middle, which was exemplified by basically playing 5 out when Hunter was in foul trouble and not going to Parker. And Parker's a bad matchup against Diallo because Parker is he's only 6'9", really. He's not another 7-footer Kansas has. And Diallo's got legit 3 inches on Parker. So that's a tough matchup for him. But it's not like KJ's any taller than that. KJ's shorter than Parker. I don't know. I thought that Kansas was just lost offensively the whole half. It was just rough to watch. It just really was.
I couldn't believe how well that zone just threw Kansas into what they were doing. First half, I mentioned all the point totals there. The final point totals end up being McCullough 16 points, 5 of 10 from the field. Hunter with 12 points. KJ only had 10 points. And really watching that game, I felt like KJ had a lot more than that, but most of them were in that first half.
That's always how I feel with KJ.
Murphy only had 2 points after halftime. Timberlake only had 1 point after halftime. DeJuan, I think all of his buckets came in the second half, but he was 2 of 8 from the field with only 5 points. So yeah, just Kansas offensively couldn't find
Was
anything.
gross.
But my question to you, Jackson, is how much does this loss matter? And in the grand scheme of the season, just how much do you think this loss matters?
It's interesting because like an early Big 12 loss on the road should never really freak anybody out. I mean, even like look, Houston's took a big loss, like we're aware of that. Baylor's been
I would
scared.
say it's a lot better than UCF, though. I will say that.
Well, that's my point. Any of these Houstons and Baylors and potentially Texases, maybe Iowa State, are they going to go lose down in Orlando? You already know the crowd's not going to be as crazy as it was for Kansas. And so maybe if Houston plays UCF on a Thursday evening where there's not a ton of students there, they're going to win that game by 20, 25, right? Because, I mean, it's not like UCF is a great team. They're not. They're barely top 80 in KenPom. There's a reason people are calling this the worst loss in a decade for Bill Self. I don't personally think it is, but there's a reason people are saying that. I don't think many of the top Big 12 teams are going to go down to Orlando and lose. So in terms of that scenario, you now have to go make up a game. And what I mean by is you got to go win your game in Houston maybe, or you got to go win a super tough game at Ames, or you have to win your rivalry game against K-State, both of them. Like you've got to win these other mid-tier road games in the conference in order to stay at that winning the conference pace, right? So I don't know what the schedule's looking. I know you got OU coming up, and then like at Oak State, you have to win at Oklahoma State. You have to, because that's another bottom tier Big 12 team. You stack up these
If
bottom
that's
tier
even
road
the thing.
losses. Where are you going to pick up your good? Like, how are you going to get above 500 if you can't beat these teams on the road that are going to finish between 9 and 14 in the conference?
Yeah, it was a bad loss. Like
Yeah,
this,
it is.
in the grand scheme of the Big 12, you just Kansas cannot lose games like this and expect to win the conference. It's just that simple. Houston, they dropped one to Iowa State. They're gonna have to play a ton of people on the road. It's just you if you're gonna win this conference, you can't lose by games. You can't lose games that
Right.
you should win on the road, especially. Kansas was what, favored by like 8.5, seven and a
Yeah.
half
I mean,
points in this game?
the like is Baylor going to go lose at UCF? Probably not. They're probably going to go down and take care of business, right? Like these are just games where you got to take care of business.
Yeah.
And I mean, looking at the Big 12 conference, I mean, is Kansas still the favorite to win the Big 12, right? What do you think about that?
Well, I believe on BetMGM they are still the favorite. If I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
I can look at that real quick, but to me, is Kansas still the favorite? Yeah, I mean they are still the favorite. Um, you know, I think Kansas has actually kind of benefited a little bit from not having the double you got to play everybody everywhere.
1-1.
If you look at the road games for Kansas, you got at Oklahoma State, at West Virginia are the next two. Kansas should win both of those. You got at Iowa State, it's going to be a tough game. At Kansas State, going to be a tough game. You got at Texas Tech, which is always tough, at Oklahoma, at Baylor, and at Houston. So Kansas avoids going at Texas. They avoid going at BYU, which is a crazy environment. They avoid going at Cincinnati. And Cincinnati, I think, is probably one of the most underrated teams in the Big 12
at this point. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, just looking at the schedule, I think Kansas probably has the best chance just in terms of that. But, man,
I mean, would you say Oklahoma State's better than UCF one way or the other? They're right around there, and West Virginia is definitely worse. So there's only two other games that would technically be like a worse loss than this one. And I think Oklahoma State's better than UCF. But so like this was the second easiest road game Kansas had. That's my point. And you drop it. Houston's not going to lose their second easiest road game. Baylor's not going to lose their second easiest road game. Texas probably won't either. These are games you've got to pick up.
I'm just looking at the schedule and starting from February, like holy heck, this is a gauntlet. Starting from February, it's versus Houston, at Kansas State, versus Baylor, at Texas Tech, at Oklahoma, versus Texas, versus BYU, at Baylor, versus Kansas State, at Houston. That's how Kansas ends the season in the Big 12.
When I looked at the schedule, I was thinking if Kansas is going to win the Big 12, you can only lose about probably one of these January games. The schedule in January is very favorable, and the one I had circled was at Iowa State on the 27th. That was the one I was a little worried about. Well, that one loss has already happened now. So now you've got to ensure you win in Stillwater and Morgantown, which even though those teams aren't great, places where Kansas has struggled historically, like honestly. And then now, and you still have to go at Ames in January. And this is supposed to be the easy part of the schedule. And it's already, everything's already, the papers are flying. The whiteboard is completely crossed out. Everything. Now you just got to win the day. You just got to win tomorrow. It's just what you have to do going forward.
Big game against Oklahoma on Saturday at 1 p.m. Oklahoma just lost to TCU. And imagine if Kansas would have fallen to TCU, sitting at 0-2 in the Big 12. That would be quite the uphill climb. And I don't know if you remember last year, Kansas actually ended up losing 3 games in a row in January. I don't know what it is about Bill Self teams in January, but usually pretty perfect in December, and then January kind of hits them in the mouth. So I'm not worried. I'm not worried, Jackson, just because.
Don't have to go to TCU either. Don't have to go to TCU either, which is I think they're really good. I mean, I watched that OU game. They put it on them. And OU's OU is a good team. Like that, and that game wasn't close in the second half. TCU beat them pretty good.
Well, all right, Jackson. 65-60 loss. Kansas falls to UCF on the road. Crazy environment. We mentioned already Dickinson, 12 points, 4 rebounds. McCullough, 16 and 6 were the leaders for Kansas in this one. 20 assists, right around the season average for Kansas, but it's the 18 turnovers in this one and only out rebounding UCF by 4 that really kind of changed the game.
The problem with the turnovers, it was all the starters. It wasn't not Timberlake or Furphy, McDowell messing up. Nope, all starters.
And now Kansas is 13-2, 4th in the Big 12. Big game against Oklahoma coming up. We will be back at the under 4 to take some of your mailbag questions, and we will also preview this Oklahoma game a little bit. So stay with us, y'all. We'll be back in a little for the under 4.
As you guys know by now, we've partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook for this college basketball season. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks and predictions throughout the college basketball season. And we are going to have special offers for you, the listeners and the viewers on the Field of 68 each and every week during the season. If you haven't signed up with BetMGM yet, use the bonus code FIELD1500 and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager on BetMGM Sportsbook. Here's what you got to do. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using the bonus code FIELD1500. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if that bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code FIELD1500 when you sign up. And remember, BetMGM is now available under one wallet in select states. As a New Jersey resident, this is super convenient for me when I have to go cover games in New York or Philly. When crossing state borders, just log into your existing account instead of having to create new accounts in each state that you go to. And most importantly, I got to let you know, we do have some fun stuff coming up for this college basketball season. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odds boosts, my personal favorite, parlay odds boosts. So download the BetMGM app today.
Welcome back, everybody, to The Hum, a Kansas Hoops podcast via the Field of 68. Jackson and I are now here, and we are back on the Under 4, the mailbag segment, and we're going to talk a little bit of Oklahoma. First things first, let's go through some of these mailbag questions. The first question we have from Twitter, and by the way, if you're not following us on Twitter, follow us at @humpod_KU. Everything updated Kansas basketball you can find there, so make sure to follow that. But here's the first one from the mailbag. What is the number one concern in regards to the KU offense? Is it DeJuan Harris always being so hesitant to shoot the basketball? And we also have another one from somebody else that I kind of added into this. Will DeJuan ever add some pit bull mentality and urgency to his game? Is there any hope he will learn to drive with speed and attack the bucket? Jackson, you want to kind of take that one first?
Yeah. First question. I don't think DeJuan being hesitant is the number one concern to the offense right now. Kansas still second in the country in assists per game, and that's largely anchored by DeJuan. And I think we can say that's probably the best part about what this offense has been. But I think the number one concern is Hunter Dickinson right now. Just it's getting increasingly harder to give him the ball. And honestly, I guess you can pair that with if it's going to get hard for him to get the ball, like DeJuan's got to take some shots. I definitely think there's some truth to that. I don't think we will ever see Pitbull DeJuan, unfortunately. I mean, if it's, I just feel like we would have by now. It's been deep into year two with him having the ball in his hands all the time. And outside of the Kentucky game, there hasn't really been a moment where DeJuan's been the guy to put the ball in the basket. I don't think that's his game. I don't
DeJuan
think that
Harris is
his
never
player.
going to be that. Never.
I don't if you're asking if is he going to turn into Frank or Devontae? Absolutely not. It's not who he is. That's why you have guys like Dickinson and McCullough around him. But it's definitely in games like last night, it would definitely be helpful to have a guard who can just kind of take over and put up shots. And Kansas just doesn't have that.
I think that's actually, to me, the spacing is the number one concern in regards to the offense, but kind of DeJuan and even El Marco, they both kind of play into that. And you just mentioned, like, it would be nice to have a guard who can go get theirs. Right now, Kansas literally does not have that. Like, Kevin McCullough is the guard that goes and gets his.
Right.
Like, Kansas doesn't have somebody that you can give the ball to late shot clock and go make something happen, like a Remy Martin from the national championship team. Kansas just simply doesn't have that this year. And I think the spacing has been affected because of that. Like, we've talked about it all year. People are sagging off of DeJuan. They're sagging off of El Marco. They're sagging off of KJ. They're packing the lane against Hunter. And we have a why is Hunter struggling to get the ball question. It's because of this exact reason. And with no floor spacing, it's going to be really hard for Kansas to put the ball in the basket. And that's why I think Bill Self went with Johnny Furphy early in this UCF game, is because Johnny Furphy can be that guy who spaces the floor. I think Nick Timberlake can be that guy that spaces the floor for Kansas. But right now, Kansas doesn't have many answers in terms of floor spacing, and that's why their offense has struggled for most of the year. And DeJuan being hesitant to shoot the basketball, like, yeah, it's going to be a thing, guys. Like, I don't think DeJuan Harris is ever going to be a pit bull mentality type of guy and really look for his. It's just not going to happen. I don't know why Kansas fans keep thinking that it's a possibility that it's going to happen. It's
All the point
clearly
guards
not
we've
gonna
ever
happen.
had. All the point
DeJuan
guards
Harris
we've ever
does
had.
not look for his shot. It's not his game. It's not what he's going to do.
Go back, Dotson, Graham, Mason, Collins, Tyshawn Taylor, Elijah Johnson. These are all guys. Those were every Kansas point guard since like 2007. And they're all guys who are capable of putting up 15 a game. And this is the first guard that a lot of these fans have had in their life, in their entire lives, cheering for Kansas, that isn't capable of doing this. So we just gotta learn to live with it. And it'll probably be back next year too. And it'll probably be the same circus again next year. And you just gotta come to terms with it.
The thing for me, the last two games, DeJuan and El Marco combined for 10 points against TCU. That was all DeJuan. They combined for 5 points against UCF. Again, all DeJuan. El Marco, first of all, we'll talk about him probably as the season goes on, but El Marco has not been great to start Big 12 play. And a lot of people on Twitter have been pushing for, Furphy to take his spot. And I think that honestly, that probably could happen at some point, just because Furphy is able to space the floor and such. But then you got a lineup of DeJuan, McCullough, Furphy, KJ, and Hunter, and that's kind of an awkward lineup to guard people with. And really having just one guard on the floor who doesn't look to score, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. So yeah, I think Kansas has a lot to really toy with. Bill Self has a lot to learn and develop with this team just in regards to what pieces fit together. And that kind of stems into the next question. How far can you realistically see KU going in March with no bench?
If Kansas is like a 3 seed, this is kind of a team where you got the recipe for a first round exit against a super hot 14 seed who can shoot the lights out. Like, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I think Kansas will be a 1 or 2 seed, but I could see Kansas going out in the second round in the first weekend. I could see it just because if McCullough is not going to be, putting up 25, and if Dickinson is not going to have any rhythm with this bench that we've seen this year, it's going to be tough to beat a team who's got 8 guys that they can go to in March, and Kansas doesn't have that. Realistically, I think Kansas makes the Elite Eight this year, but that'll change as the Big 12 season goes on. I'm sure I'll change my mind 12 times, but right now I still see Kansas as a second weekend team, even with the bench this week, because there's just so much experience, like Dewan and Kevin and Hunter. These guys have played so many big games in their careers that they're, even when things are going bad, they're still not going to fold at any point.
Again, guys, it's January and everybody's acting like the sky is falling just because Kansas has lost UCF. Now I get it. Kansas hasn't looked great in a lot of games this year, but it's still early, and this team has so many new pieces that they're still trying to put together. I think with this question, it was asked by one of my buddies, Michael Donzelli, actually on Twitter. Donzi, what I would tell you is with no bench, nobody really contributing. Yeah, I don't think Kansas is making it very far in March at all. Like probably a first weekend exit team. But if Johnny Furphy, Marco Jackson, and Nick Timberlake can find their roles and find something with this Kansas team, then I think we're talking, national championship ceiling like everybody expected. So it is going to be about the bench. It's going to be
totally does.
It's going to be about the guys that aren't Ev, KJ, McCullough, and DeJuan Harris. Even though all those guys can improve and play better, it's going to be about Furphy, Marco Jackson, and Nick Timberlake. You heard it here first, guys. If Kansas is going to make a run in March, it's those 3 guys making a big difference.
Yeah, it is.
All right. The last one we have is from your father, Jackson.
Hey, Dad.
Why are we struggling to get the ball to Hunter in the half-court set? I'll kind of take this one first.
Do it.
Because how are you going to pass it to him if you got 4 people standing around him? And especially whenever UCF went zone yesterday, like really we couldn't get the ball to Hunter, and whenever we got it to him in the high post, he wasn't really doing much with it. So I don't know. I don't think Kansas is necessarily struggling to get the ball to Hunter in the half court. Like I don't think it's like a huge issue right now, but yeah, Hunter Dickinson.
I've got a theory here. I was a small guard in my playing days, and a lot of the reasons I was able to play as many minutes as I did was because I was a very good post-entry passer. I think Kansas is horrible at passing the post. The whole reason we had a conversation about Ernest Uday is because Kevin McCullough made a terrible post-entry pass, and he made 3 more terrible post-entry passes last night. KJ is either not getting enough on it or he's throwing it into the 4th row like he did that one possession yesterday. Like Kansas is not, like, some of the sloppiness with the post-entry passes is crazy to me, and especially for a team who gets a lot of assists and we claim to pass the ball very well. Like, other than DeJuan, I have no faith in Marco Jackson to get a post-entry pass to Hunter Dickinson right now, especially because he is going to have a lot of arms and there's going to be a lot of movement in there. It's tough to do, especially against a long UCF team. I literally think that I don't think Kevin's a good entry passer, and I don't think KJ is a good entry passer. And I think Bill is trying. I can see the motions happening for Hunter to get the ball. And I just don't think the passing lanes are clear enough to where these guys feel comfortable making this pass. And Kevin would rather shoot it anyway. So if he doesn't see a clear lane to get Hunter the ball, now it's Kevin time. So I think that's definitely a factor too.
Yeah, I agree. Kansas's entries to the post have not been good this year at all. That'll wrap it up for our mailbag segment. We're going to talk Oklahoma just really fast here. Kansas plays Oklahoma at Allen Fieldhouse at 1 p.m. on Saturday. Oklahoma coming off a loss, just like Kansas, lost to TCU. And overall, this season, Oklahoma is now 13-2 with two good losses, I would say, to North Carolina and TCU. They've beaten Iowa, who's, Iowa, they're pretty mid. Let me check Iowa on KenPom really fast. I believe, Iowa is 51.
Oh,
so
okay, that's better than I thought.
not a terrible win there. USC, not what people expected at all this season. That win kind of has diminished a little bit. You got Providence with Bryce Hopkins. Providence is a very good team, in my opinion. You got Arkansas. They have also beaten Arkansas, is actually right under UCF at 80 in KenPom, which is kind of crazy to me considering how much talent Arkansas has. And then you got Iowa State, a good win. Iowa State is 15th in KenPom right now, so that's a good win for Oklahoma, who's sitting at 20 in KenPom. Number 42 offense, number 15 defense. Couple KenPom notables as well. They're number 8 in effective field goal percentage defense and number 10 in 3-point percentage defense. So Kansas is going to have to figure some things out on the offensive end of this one. And they're also number 10 in 2-point percentage offense, which Kansas has been really good defending the two this year. So it'll be interesting to see how all of that plays out. But what are we looking at in terms of players for Oklahoma here, Jackson? You want to give us a run that really fast?
Well, let me tell you why those 2-point numbers are like that. They're two guard heavy. They've got a Frank and Devontae thing going on here. Javian McCollum and Otega Owe. Those are their two guys, averaging 15 and 14 points per game, respectively. Listen to these splits from Owe. He's shooting 61% from the field and 67% from three on 2 attempted per game. Like, is this kid the best 3-point shooter in the country right now? It is ridiculous. And I looked at that. I'm like, what is he? Like, literally 2 for 3? No, he's like consistently like 1 for 2 every single game, or 2 for 2.
He's 14 to 21 on the year.
He's shooting that thing. And then Javian is also 40% from 3. And like they're just two very impressive players, and Javian McCollum 4 assists per game on only 2 turnovers per game. So 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio there. He also shoots 92% from the free throw line. So basically what we're looking at is these two guards are going to try and score the ball at will at a high rate. And it's going to be up to DeJuan. And I think, honestly, what should be McCullough guarding one of these two guys. I don't think Elmarco's quite there physically yet to handle huge Big 12 responsibilities like that for right now. And I want to see McCullough take on more challenges on the defensive end, just personally, because that's why we loved him in the first place when he got here 2 years ago, is because he's one of the best defenders in the entire conference. And I feel like his offense has been so awesome for us this season that we've kind of forgot to tap into that part of his game. And he made a couple really nice defensive plays last night. I would like to see him try and guard one of these two guys because they're going to try and go for 20 each.
Yeah, Kansas is going to have to guard. It's how many times this year has somebody just gone absolutely insane on Kansas? Yep. I mean, Sellers yesterday, he's UCF's best player. He went for 18, 7 of 11 field goals.
Dillingham went crazy. Who's that kid from UConn? Forget his name. He went crazy.
Newton went absolutely nuts.
It's
Kansas can't keep doing this. They can't keep letting opposing teams, best players go crazy, and it just keeps happening. So
that's the warning I'm giving, is that one of these two guys is probably going to, and everyone needs to brace themselves for that.
Yeah. Well, all right, Jackson. We got Kansas, Oklahoma, top 10 matchup inside of Allen Fieldhouse on Saturday. I'm going with my family to this game. I got my little bro coming into town, so I'm really excited for this one. We will be back with you guys after the Oklahoma game, and then we got Okie. Is it Okie State right up next, or is it West
Stillwater? I think it's Stillwater next.
Yep, and then we got Okie State down in Stillwater. After that, we will be back on the hum after the OU game and before Okie State. We'll see you guys then. Thank you for joining us on this episode.